Hello my beautiful watchers and welcome to my review of 50 Shades Darker. Very quickly before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that I am aware of the irony that I chose the name The Dom when I became a YouTuber, and a book series that's supposedly about bondage became my most infamous series of reviews. I wish that was by design, but it really is just an amusing coincidence. And yes, I am also aware that when I suggest that people subscribe to my channel, the Dom is asking you to be his sub. Again, I wish that was intentional, but it's pure coincidence, and I don't want to lean into the joke too much or my channel will be demonetized faster than you can say double standards, YouTube! Lastly, and most importantly, I would like to politely remind everyone that a trigger warning is not a tongue-in-cheek way of saying that someone might get flustered or offended and clutch their pearls. It's an actual recognized term used in psychology pertaining to the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, specifically in regards to certain events or subjects that might cause an unexpected resurgence of traumatic memories. So with that in mind, trigger warning. The themes of this review include abusive relationships, emotional manipulation, and sexual assault. Please bear that in mind if you have experienced these things firsthand. I have not, as of the making of this video, seen the film yet because this is specifically a review of the book. I will be reviewing the film as an adaptation next to conclude this year's torture. To avoid this review sounding too much like a carbon copy of the one I did for 50 Shades of Grey, which if you haven't seen yet, there's the thing, I'm going to play a quickfire round of just like last time and then try not to dwell on these particular subjects too much for the rest of the review. Don't worry, there's plenty of new stuff to be horrified about in this book. Just like last time, this is still porn for the pornless. People who lack access to or think they're above watching pornography collectively decided that this erotic fiction was okay for them because it didn't count as porn, and it rode that fanbase into the mainstream. Just like last time, the supposed sex god Christian Grey is admittedly more willing to commit to the foreplay than most men, but consistently fails to last more than a minute once the actual fucking begins, and also just like last time, he only gets away with it because the book's lead will violently orgasm if you so much as look at her. Just like last time, the book's point of view character, Anastasia Steele, says the words "oh my" more times than George Takei and Professor Farnsworth combined. She also thinks things that would never in a million years cross the mind of any self-respecting woman in her early 20s. The phrase "holy cow," for example. Just like last time, Grey is unapologetically the most jealous and petty man in the world, and this is treated as an acceptable side effect of his obsessive love. And just like last time, this author cannot write for shit. There's been no improvement in James's writing at all. She still repeats the same information over and over again in rapid succession, and still uses the same 3 descriptive words for everything. I can also, with deep regrets, confirm that no one handed E.L. James a dictionary between books with the definition of the word subconscious bookmarked and highlighted. Okay, onto the fresh hell this book brought upon me. This book is devoid of structure. It's just a series of completely disconnected, meandering events from start to finish, peppered lavishly with arguments and sex, neither of which were in any way appealing to read about. Just in case you decided to skip my handy-dandy synopsis video last week, here's a very quick summary of the plot of this book. Grey does something incredibly selfish, controlling, mean-spirited, jealous, overbearing, or privacy-invadey. They fight about it, then instead of holding him accountable for it, Anna rides his cock, then concedes on the issue. Copy and paste that 600 times and you have 50 Shades Darker. Every other plot synopsis for this book that I read online while researching this episode was wildly misleading because they all concentrated on describing the almost interesting stuff that happened every 10 chapters or so, in between all the fighting and fucking. Don't get me wrong, I can totally see why they would want to do that, but it's not an accurate reflection of the plot of this book. Even though the stuff they described, them getting back together, the crazy ex-stalker, the sexual predator boss and the helicopter crash was indeed in the book, collectively they wouldn't have been able to fill a single chapter with the amount of time spent on them. They're just in the background for a while, then suddenly they happen and are resolved within a few pages. I've not been able to confirm this, but word on the street is 50 Shades of Grey and 50 Shades Darker was originally one obnoxiously long story that was split into 2 and fleshed out when it came time to turn them into books. I have no trouble believing this, as it explains the complete lack of ending to the first book and the sheer, colossal amount of nothing that happens in this one. This book represents a notable change of tack for James. The previous insistence that Grey's behaviour is okay, no really it's romantic, seriously you just don't get it, is replaced with, okay fine, maybe it's not okay, but she can fix him. She can fix him!
She can fix him!
Grey's bondage fixation is now well and truly defined as an unfortunate side effect of his childhood mental trauma. He feels like he needs to get revenge on his late mother for neglecting him, so he tracks down and punishes women who look like her. He also fucks them, but that's a whole different avenue of fucked up. It's also revealed that he got into BDSM because his sort of stepfather used to burn parts of his body with cigarettes, so he psychologically couldn't allow himself to be touched there in a sensual way, but he was still a super horny teenager, so when Eleanor, his mother's friend, offered him a way to fuck that was devoid of any sort of romance or sensuality, he jumped at it and got so wrapped up in it he never learned how to have a normal, loving, caring relationship. Now, I'd like to think that I covered just how wrong that understanding of BDSM is quite well when I reviewed the first book, so I won't go over that again. However, I feel I should point out that James's belief that the love of the right person can undo mental health problems far more effectively than medication or years of therapy is not only ignorant, but also potentially damaging to people who really should be seeking out the latter for their problems, but are already hesitant to do so. Yes, the emotional support of loved ones can be immensely beneficial to the healing process, but to make out that it's some sort of miracle cure is just as much an unforgivable romanticization of mental health issues as James's unforgivable romanticization of abuse. I genuinely don't understand how E.L. James couldn't see that by writing this, she was basically telling people who are struggling to get over childhood trauma and not having any luck in their love life that they are doomed to suffer that trauma forever. That is such a horrible message, I can barely process it. The story even goes as far as to give the "she can fix him" theme an official medical seal of approval. When Anna goes to see Gray's psychiatrist, Dr. Flynn, he tells her, yes, in my professional doctor opinion, you are fixing him. Excellent job, please keep it up. I mean, there's some bullshit technical terms thrown in, but that's the gist of it. What's really unfortunate is, in order to further this theme, the book actually starts drawing attention to Gray's abusive habits at the start, so you can see minimal improvements in them at the end. Anna even acknowledges that Gray appears to completely lack human empathy when he's unable to understand what he did wrong, when he took his girlfriend to get a haircut from his ex, and why his repeated attempts to control her career and money are upsetting her. Miss Steele, I regret to inform you there's a word for someone with that condition. It's psychopath. No, seriously, it's misused to mean axe murderer all the time, but someone who just absolutely cannot put themselves in another person's shoes enough to not do radically hurtful things to them is a much more accurate meaning of the word. Another of this book's main fundamental failings is it confuses love with all manner of other things, most prominently lust, but also need, pity, and validation. Anna is always talking about how much she loves Christian, but the only positive things that she ever brings up about him is how sexy he is, and how much it pleases her to know that someone that hot finds her attractive. For Gray's part, the only compliments that he ever gives her are almost exclusively in relation to himself. You make me feel like I don't need the anger anymore. You make me want to leave a normal life. The compliments are always in relation to the effect that she has on him, not about anything nice about her. Gray only feels good about himself when Anna is there with him, but like I said, that's not love, that's need. There's a big difference. The first major chest contraction I felt while reading this was brought on very early on this time around. The way that Gray worms his way back into Anna's life really struck a nerve with me. For starters, 3 days? He only gave her 3 days of peace before harassing her again? Gods forbid she have any time to think, or she might realise what a foul influence he really is on her life. Secondly, I've never tried yelling through a book to a fictional character before, but when he offered to give her a lift to the photography exhibit, I found myself yelling, "Anna, no, 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 that's textbook how toxic people keep you in their lives. They push you to the brink and then they do one really spontaneous kind thing that makes you think there might be a chance for them before they go right back to treating you like shit. They always find a way to stay necessary to you." Too real, man, too real. Anna, just cash the check he gave you when he stole your car and take a fucking Uber, I'm begging you. But no, she accepts his offer and it plays out exactly how he wanted. He knew full well that all he had to do was find a way to get within close proximity to her because her new sexual awakening and infatuation with his good looks would make her powerless to resist taking him back. And the book just keeps on going downhill from there because it becomes very obvious very quickly that Anna blames herself for the breakup as much as Gray because she considers her fear of physical pain just as unreasonable as his fear of intimacy. Slightly random tangent, I tried listening to this on audiobook because I thought it might help me get through it, especially because then I could crank it up to double speed and listen to Alvin and the Chipmunks talk about their inner goddess, but if anything, I think it made it slightly worse. The flirty emails that they send each other are always presented in the form of an email in the book, with the sender, subject heading, and digital signature at the bottom, and the narrator always reads them as is. From Christian Grey. To Anastasia Steele. Subject, your smart mouth. Miss Steele, if you don't stop giving me sass, I'll find another use for that pretty mouth of yours. Christian Grey, CEO, Grey Holdings Limited. from Anastasia Steele. To Christian Grey. Subject, your smart mouth. Ooh, I'd like that. Anastasia Steele, personal assistant to Jack Hyde, publishing company whatever. To Anastasia Steele, from Christian Grey. Do you see how annoying that would get? These audiobooks were impossible to listen to. The book really does try to convince you that Anna getting Jack Hyde's former job is due to her own merit and not Grey pulling the strings as the secret owner of the company, but it's like, what merits? She's only been with the company 3 weeks, she's constantly sending personal emails from her work computer, constantly taking personal phone calls while on the clock, she's often late to work and late back from lunch. They should have fired her, not promoted her. I touched upon this in the synopsis, but holy fuck, I cannot believe that Grey's first words to Anna in this book was a comment about her weight. I mean, the recurring theme is that he cares so much about her health and well-being, he just cuts through the bullshit and tells her like it is, but that can fuck right off. You never have the excuse to berate an ex-lover about their appearance, no matter what your intentions are. That's vile. When Grey offers to give Anna a lift to Portland, he doesn't bother telling her that he plans to take his personal helicopter. It's little touches like that that show just how little he actually cares about her as a person. Considering everything else that Grey pulls in this story, forcing a hug on Anna in the car is probably inconsequential, but as someone who's not naturally a hugger, it did irk me that he ignored her direct request for him not to do that. Grey is really over-familiar with her like this before they even get back together, and once again I recognise this as toxic person behaviour 101. By calling her baby and constantly touching her, he's trying to subtly ease her back into a relationship with him without having to confront the issue that broke them up. Not really relevant to this review, but I clocked a few references to elevators in this book, which is kind of making me nervous about the film considering how big a role they played in the last one's cinematography. The inner goddess is back of course, along with Anna's so very misnamed shoulder angel, her subconscious. If you'll remember, I mentioned that the level of detail that went into describing the antics of these imaginary personifications of Anna's indecision started to make me question her mental health in the last book. Well, believe it or not, it's so much worse in this one. At one point, I kid you not, Anna says ouch when her inner goddess elbows her in the ribs. This is no longer even remotely metaphorical. Anna actually believes these people are real and they can touch her. In the first half of the book, Anna keeps calling herself Icarus, flying too close to the sun, i.e. Grey. All I could think was, Icarus was a child, keep him out of your stupid whiny sexual metaphors, you pervert. So, Jose taking pictures of Anna without her knowing, then putting them up for sale without checking if it's okay with her first. The legality of this is sketchy at best, but even if it isn't a crime, yikes! Can you imagine a huge, detailed, close-up picture of you being hung on a complete stranger's wall as decoration? Some random guy you may never even have met leering at your image every day and you have zero control over it. Honestly, Grey being a jealous douchebag and buying them all was probably for the best here because at least he's the douchebag we know. Anna may have been too much of a pathetic wet paper towel of a person to call him on it, but Jose is a fucking asshole. It's implied he did it as a tribute because he's still in love with Anna, but whoop-de-fucking-do, that excuses nothing! He gets a sort of karmic punishment, I guess, because he has to listen to the girl he's in love with have really loud sex in the shower with a guy he doesn't like at the end of the book when he stays over at his place.
Yes! 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 Oh! Oh, yes! Yes!
So, by far my most controversial statement of the first book review was saying that even though Grey very rarely bothered to confirm consent before initiating sex with Anna, he was only guilty of being a complete arsehole and not a rapist, because in every single instance of this, Anna was in fact very keen to have sex with him. Please remember that Anna is the POV character of the book, so that's not an assumption on my part, it's confirmed. Risking throwing fuel on the fire, I stand by this assessment because saying otherwise is very close to saying that in the cases of possible rape, the opinion of the victim doesn't matter. Yes, there are constantly horrible cases in real life of women not realizing they've been sexually assaulted because they've been brainwashed by society to not know that their consent matters, and they genuinely don't know that they have the option to say no to certain things, but that's not what happened here. To tell an adult woman who wanted to have sex with someone and then did that, regardless of how they feel about it, they were raped, is quite frankly condescending. However, none of us need to worry about disagreeing this time around because Grey definitely sexually assaulted Anna when he dragged her into an alleyway in the first chapter and clashed their teeth together in his hurry to get his tongue down her throat. There is nothing he even could have misinterpreted as consent in this situation. He grabbed and kissed a woman he wasn't currently dating, knowing full well she wouldn't have consented to it if he'd asked blast first. For fuck's sake, the first book was already a big hit, so E.L. James would have known that this one was guaranteed to sell well. In a world already riddled with non-consent issues, it's so irresponsible to write in a scene where sexual assault is rewarded with rekindled affection from the victim. Just when you think it can't get any worse, right after Gray assaults her, he immediately starts shaming Anna for leading Jose on with that extra long hug that she gave him, and Anna realizes that yes, indeed, she is a terrible person for giving her male friend an extra long hug. According to this book, friend zoning is a much worse crime than dragging women into alleyways to have your way with them, and every woman immoral enough to hug someone longer than the usual amount of time should be ashamed of herself. Gray likes to remind Anna that Jose attempted to force a kiss on her even after he does exactly the same thing. This character will never stop pushing the boundaries of hypocrisy. During their getting back together negotiations, Gray subtly shifts the blame for the belt incident onto Anna by telling her that she should have used the safe word right away and he would have stopped. She realizes that it was all her fault and apologizes. She apologizes to Gray for the belt beating and the breakup. Right, before we go any further, I should probably address one of the often voiced opinions that doesn't defend this book, but denounces people's anger towards it, because said anger, somewhat insultingly, implies that the people reading it are unable to tell that this is a work of fiction and not something to be emulated in real life. So, for starters, if you have ever felt that I was implying that, I apologize, that was not my intention. But let's not kid ourselves. The fact that the media we consume has a profound effect on us, both consciously and subconsciously, regardless of us knowing perfectly well the difference between fiction and non-fiction, isn't even in debate in the scientific community anymore. The only question is the level that it affects us and how much it varies from person to person. Furthermore, a study conducted in 2014 found there was a distinct correlation between people who had read 50 Shades of Grey and people who had fallen into relationships that involved some form of abusive behaviour from their partners. Now, to be fair, the study specified that there was no way to know if being a fan of the book was responsible for these people being more likely to end up with abusive partners, or if their experiences with abusive partners for some reason made them more likely to become fans of the book, but I believe the fact that the former is even a possibility more than justifies people's anger towards E.L. James and her shitty books. So, getting back to that, Anna goes on to apologise to Gray for not being what he wanted. If I could say anything to E.L. James, it would be, how dare you? How dare you write this? In the time between the fights and the inevitable makeup sex, Gray is constantly asking, are you still mad at me? Are you still mad at me? Are you still mad at me? But he never does anything to make up for what he's done. He just acts like he's entitled to her forgiveness eventually and is just waiting it out. He also sometimes claims that he doesn't understand why she's mad, and I kid you not, when she offers to list the reasons, he says, no, let's do something else. He is like a child play acting at adulthood, which I totally get considering his backstory, but how is that sexy or romantic? Why is this sulky, tantrum-throwing man-child so desirable? I just don't get it! I'm genuinely surprised that Anna was able to realise that her boss saying things like she looks radiant today or constantly inviting her out for drinks was inappropriate considering her complete inability to recognise unacceptable human behaviour in Gray, but whatever. As I said in the synopsis, Gray contacts Anna via her work email and flirts with her, but then gets really pissed at her for flirting back because the emails are archived and her boss Jack Hyde can access them. Ignoring the hypocrisy for now, why the fuck are they even emailing each other? This is a personal conversation between two 20-somethings in 2012. By this point, even texting was considered old-fashioned with the rise of instant messaging. Back and forth emails? How the fuck is E.L. James this out of touch? It doesn't seem possible. It's actually kind of amazing that it only took Gray one day after they got back together to cross the line into insane stalker territory again, when he bought an entire company in order to keep tabs on Anna. He couldn't control himself for 24 hours. I also just can't believe that smiling is what defused Anna's anger after this first argument. He smiles at her, and she forgets her anger and they have sex. A single smile is enough to undo all the resentment she feels about him being unforgivably intrusive about her life and career. There's what's supposed to be a touching moment when Gray tells her that she's in control in the bedroom now, but the book even fucks that up. Him telling her to tell him what to do isn't him relinquishing control, he's still telling her what to do. My previous theory as to why Gray might be appealing to people with low self-esteem, the alluring fantasy that a super attractive member of the opposite sex would become uncontrollably infatuated with your plain uninteresting self for reasons unknown, freeing you from the pressure to impress or to work hard for their attention, was utterly destroyed by the revelation that Gray wanted to fuck Anna because she looked like his mother. Sorry, reader inserters, unless you happen to look like someone's parent, I guess it's back to Tinder for you. My new theory is the target audience for this book is so sick of partners who can't or won't express themselves that an abusive arsehole who states his desires openly seems like a welcome change exchange, at least in principle. Gray's feelings may be vile, but at least he's in touch with them. The flirting in this book, that takes place both in person and in email form, is so cringeworthy. Unfortunately, that actually makes kind of sense in the context of the story, as this is the first relationship that either of these people have had, but amazingly that doesn't help make it any less painful having to read about two people in their 20s talk like they're horny, love-smitten 14-year-olds. Gray's obsession with being in complete fiscal control over Anna is not only continued from the first book, it's ramped up in this. Not only does he claim that he got $24,000 for her battered old Volkswagen, bullshit meter must have broken a dial on that one, he also randomly transfers $50,000 into her account later for absolutely no reason. The first thought that occurs to Anna after she donates money to charity is worrying about how mad Gray is going to be about it. Do I even need to explain how fucked up that is? He repeatedly encourages her to quit her job and become his dependent all the way through the book, and the pierced resistance, he won't even let her pay for the meal that she arranged with her friends and just happened to invite him to tag along to. The fact that he makes his girlfriend feel like she's being turned into a gold-digging trophy wife every day is connected to his aforementioned complete lack of human empathy. In his head, he makes so much more money than her, it makes perfect sense for him to pay for everything and buy her super expensive cars and clothing. That this would make her feel cheap, that maybe it would make her feel good to do something for herself or for him once in a while, or that accepting large sums of money from the person she's sleeping with would make her feel like she's a prostitute, either doesn't occur to him or doesn't matter to him at all. Good lord, in 2012's economy, getting a job right after university in the specific field you were hoping for and making enough money to support yourself while living in a city is really fucking impressive. Anna has every reason to feel proud of herself, and Gray is trying to take that away from her. He wants to be responsible for her well-being to make him feel good, and to hell with her feelings on the subject. I hate this guy so much I can't take it anymore! Hey beautiful watchers, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that there's a variety of rewards you can earn by becoming a Patreon, including early access to all videos, getting to be a part of the survey about how many people saw the film and read the book, or playing Minecraft with me on my 24-hour server. Higher level contributors can also join the Dom Skype chat room, and best of all, choose future episodes of Lost in Adaptation. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, I had to use up all of my money bribing the guard at the mouth of the underworld so I could sneak in and liberate the soul of my recently deceased corgi, Mr. Fluffykins. Fear not, if you would instead be willing to like, share, subscribe, or a combination of all three, that goes a long way towards helping my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. Have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon.